Hi, my name is Nick Francis. I'm the Chief Technology and Marketing Officer for Brooklyn Vendor Assurance. This is a strategic thinking series about building a vendor management office. I've spoken in the past about building an office and why you'd want to consider one of these. This video is about choosing the right operating model archetype for your vendor management office function.
Vendor Ops, leveling up your vendor management.
So first option is you can centralize it. So centralized operating model means you've got a single team that works on behalf of all the other business units in the organization. Some of the benefits of this is you can get to standardize the methods a lot easier. You can achieve economies of scale because everything's centralized, and you can also put together all the specialist skills in one place to be accessed at a particular time in a centralized model. Some of the drawbacks though is your resources are limited and they're thus dedicated. There's some barriers to compliance in terms of having it as all bunched up, especially if you're a really big organization. You've got a lot of vendors. Bunching it up into a single function, a single team is quite difficult to scale and get across everything. And it's also then a challenge outside of that to drive business awareness because it's a single small function that's got to push out that awareness broad, far and wide. So if we take a look at the opposite to that, which is a decentralized model, some of the benefits of that is you get a decent amount of user buy-in. So because it's across and it's decentralized and all the business units take the responsibility of that function, you can get a decent amount of buy-in and compliance. There's more resources available because you're going to split it all up and decentralize it into various SMEs that are within the business units that work with vendors and suppliers on a regular basis. And it's a lot easier to disseminate business awareness because the businesses are responsible or aware that they are responsible for managing vendors in this function. The thing you can't do is it lacks leverage, is inconsistency. There's too many process variants, like each business unit and each person will do things differently. So it's really hard to track to a compliance level and thus it lacks consistency. So what you're going to have is a real challenge to put that back together to see how are we performing? How are we doing from a supplier management function? You'll do well in pockets, but you won't be able to see at a macro level how that function is performing and how suppliers and vendors within the business are being managed to a consistent standard. That would be very, very difficult. So our recommendation and what we like to see in an organization is a coordinated model, which leverages the best of both, best of a centralized and best of a decentralized model. And we don't really think there's pretty much any drawbacks in this because you're bringing together the pros of all of them in the fact you're having this small SME level team that sets the standard, sets the methods of doing things, sets the blueprint out as to how things will be followed. They then work with the business and dedicated people within those business units and within the various teams around the business that are working with suppliers and vendors on a day-to-day and regular basis as to how they go about and do things and coordinate. So they've got that maximum reach, maximum buy-in because they've got a nominated person within the business units, but it all comes back to a central function that sets the policy, sets the standard, that sets the tone of how things are done, which means invariably there's more resources. So there's some dedicated resources and then there's a larger number of matrix managed resources that do this part-time, and also there's a lot more business awareness. So whenever we say build a vendor management office, we never say just have this single team that tries to get across everything. What we mean is we have this single team, this centralized function that sets the tone for how things are done and provides the management, SME, coordination and governance layer out into the business units and works with the business units to do that. Ultimately, what you end up with is this balance of this scale where if you went to centralized, you would have this high degree of control, but you also have a real high cost to doing that. And to get enough people in to cover everything or every supplier in a business in a centralized model wouldn't be a good approach or a good use of money. You'd end up with a huge team that is just too costly to run on top of everything else the organization has to do from an operational standpoint. Go to decentralized and what you end up with is low cost, which is great, but literally no controls. So you've got no control, no ability to control anything that goes on in the function. There's no standards, no common approach. So what we say is put that into the middle. Like I said, the coordinated model, you get best of both worlds, which leads you to very little drawbacks. I've mentioned all of these already, but ultimately the reason for going coordinated is you will get 99% of the benefit with very little drawback that you get within the centralized and the decentralized model. I hope that's helpful. Watch out for the next videos that are going to cover what the team should look like and how many people should be in a team, what type of skill set should be in a team for a vendor management office. Thank you.
To keep up with the latest Vendor Ops news, subscribe here and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Links in the description below.